Hey everybody, so today we're going to be talking about hierarchy and white space for designers. Primarily this video is to help you understand how to place your content essentially, and it's not very important to know where to put pictures, but get the basic idea of how to make your typography or your words in your page readable, organized, and nice looking. Um, so I believe these are some terms that you're gonna want to know before you watch this video, which is using the leading or line spacing, your kerning, the font space, your grid systems for typography uses or just web uses. There's a lot of content on the web dealing with that. Your type font faces, meaning you're contrasting between serifs or sans serifs or your bolds or your light fonts. You have color, and this is especially important if you're dealing with web content and making it accessible to people. The placement of text, and I know this is extremely frustrating if you're trying to do it on Word because there's not that much you could do. You could only pretty much move the margins over like what I did, um, which is pretty, I think it makes it look better. I don't like reading these long lines. The line length is super important to think about because when you're making these papers, no one enjoys reading a paper that goes all the way this way and then has these like two line spaces. Ugh. It's not very good design. Um, so basically the whole point of using the hierarchy and the using good white amount of white spaces, you're trying to organize your content. You're thinking and being conscious about your placement of typography, your pictures, images, and most importantly, again, it's using your white space. That white space is truly what helps contrast what's important and what's not. So, let's see. So as I was stating, it's like some other design element within it as a design for hacker. So in the book, it states that a piece of information with a lot of white space around it will often be more important than other information. So with that in mind, white space separates information that you're trying to make relatable and or different. So I mean the simplest idea that I ended up getting was if you're on Microsoft Word, and I'll go way more into this. So if you go in Microsoft Word, you're grouping together your one idea, which is your title, and then you're grouping your other ideas, your body text, and then you're separating those by other paragraphs. And so this is an example when you only separate these ideas with the space in between them. And so there's no need to put like two spaces, but you only need one space to kind of understand that there's the title and the subtitle are one group, and your body text is something completely separate. This is another example when you're only applying the font size. The hierarchy kind of gives the hierarchy basically means like you want some attention brought to a certain thing more than something else. So your title would be the largest, subtitle the second biggest, and then the body text would be all the same relative size. And then this is an example if you ended up bringing like an italicized and bolding features, which are your font faces. You're going to be wanting to put on like bold or whatnot, so then it gives it more like visual impact as well as the subtitle. You don't want it to be bold because then it's gonna almost kind of look exactly like it. You kind of want to think about it going, this is what I want the viewer to understand is the most important thing, while this being the second most important thing, going along with a bland body text, which is separated by that white space. And one thing is that uh, this is just dealing with Word. There's a lot more other ways that you could kind of separate your content, and other applications that you could do it. So in this next segment, I'm going to be going over an InDesign um an InDesign thing that I ended up doing. Okay, so this is my example of a project that I ended up doing, and this is primarily how I ended up learning how to use white space and hierarchy and the grid system even to basically using the exact same information, being able to make different compositions for the viewer in an interesting way. So this was a art exhibition, and all the formatting is like an 8 by 8 paper, and we have the title of it is Inventing Abstraction, and so this is the body text. This is the second the subheader, the header, and you have the date and where it's located. When you're thinking about this kind of stuff, I use actually, I don't want to go way depth into it. I just want you to kind of understand the hierarchy that's going into it and how I'm using the white space and what I was thinking when I was doing it. So in this one, I honestly didn't know how I was going to be able to make so many different things. And so um, I was thinking, you're thinking about the margins and the white space that's really holding all this together. You're saying that there's on the left there's a margin and on the right there's a larger margin, so it's offset and not necessarily in the center of the page, which kind of I think adds a little interest to it. So the title's at the very top. The date I thought was like an important thing. And so you're saying this is based off what I thought was important. So I thought the title was important. I thought the date was important. I thought the subheader, the subtitle was like third important, fourth important, and the fifth important. The last thing the viewer wants to see is where it's going to be. In this, oh my goodness. No. All right, in this next example, I kind of thought of it in the same way. This one kind of utilizes a grid more, but the white space is contrasting this other area. The title is almost like on its own. Then the date I thought was also like I still think thought the same thing with this design. And I placed all the extra stuff over here on the right column. And so you're seeing that it's a subheading in italics, it's the body. And so as you see, there's not really much that I'm messing with this other than the the font spacing, making it for like all caps. All of it is the same font. It's just the way I'm spacing it and where I'm placing it that really kind of makes it a totally different thing. And so, oh my god. So when again, this is the same content designed in a different fashion. I was using the white space. The borders on the sides are a lot smaller, but the borders on the top and bottom just look different. And so I was focusing on kind of separating out and making it look different. And so again, this is the same thing, using the white space to separate it out, and how this date is totally on its own, but it's still lined up to this date. So it almost creates like this imaginary line that connects both of them. And I'm just using this white space to separate these ideas. And I mean, this is all creative. This isn't practical for what you guys are going to be using your hierarchy for, but this is just examples of like cool little ideas that you could be thinking about when you're thinking about using white space to contrast your content. Essentially, it's about blocking your ideas down. And so if I go on further, I'm starting to utilize my font faces, which is bold, and I'm still using the same idea of using the white space and the contrasting of content to visually make it more interesting for the viewer. This is similar to one of the first ones that I ended up doing. Um, just utilizing more of the bold and then kind of calling out some other things over other things. Again, still like this again, this is only using bold, so it's not that crazy. It's just so you know, as a designer, there's so many different ways that you could separate the content. And bold, line spacing. And so here I used the font size to kind of make the design different altogether, but I was very conscious about how things met up and what things lined up with. Like I wanted the A to line up with this address, and I wanted this date to line up with the bottom of the body text. And just these little ideas that kind of make everything look so different. All right, so that pretty much concludes What I had to say about hierarchy and white space. The examples I showed you were primarily typography driven, but most of the stuff that you will be going through, I think the most important stuff that you will be going through is being able to use your white space dealing with your web content, your printing content, especially if you're making job aids. You want these job aids to be like readable. You don't want a job aid that's going to be sitting there and cause more confusion for your reader. You want to be able to organize an idea and make several different forms of that and be very conscious about how you want things organized. Um, I believe that's pretty much it dealing with the hierarchy. It's just a very conscious process. It's a lot of editing, and I think how I was going off in the beginning, to be a good designer, you have to be able to organize and utilize your white space to give the information as easily and as cleanly, not a good word, cleanly, but directly, I guess, to the viewer. And that's pretty much concludes the video on trying to simplify the hierarchy and white space for you guys. All right, take care.